Okay, and we're live. Just getting things going here. 4 minutes early. 4 minutes of troubleshooting and technical stuff. Actually, I think it should all be good because I didn't change anything from before, so should be fine. Guys, let me know how the audio is as usual. And this time let me know if it's clipping. Because, yeah. I watched one of my streams back from a recent one, and I was like, what the hell, it's clipping? But I guess it's because I was like further away, and that does change things. Yeah, what's up? How's everyone doing? How's everyone's Saturday? I guess it's afternoon for probably most of you guys, but it's still technically morning for me. I had a good time this morning, just chilling. I was up pretty early actually, and randomly was watching the ESL DreamHack qualifiers for SC2, just because a friend of mine tweeted about it, and so I found myself engrossed in sport of some kind, I suppose. Sport, but yeah, no, it's good. Hangover Saturday, exactly. Although I'm not hungover, but other folks might be. You did 60K on your mountain bike. That's crazy. Today. Wow. All right, let's get going here in a second. We'll do the usual Q&A session, and then we'll talk. We'll see what kind of topics come up. I'm just gonna message Flux here. Okay, let's see. I want to share this. How do I do that? Sending out the message everywhere. And in about 1 minute, we will get going here. There we go. All right. Okay, so diving in as usual, I believe. If you guys are curious about any headphone measurements that have been done by me, they're linked in the description there, I think. It should be. And there's a link to the forum where we have a database of sorts at the moment. I did actually just recently add a couple of things to that, or at least the person who's helping me with that, just out of the goodness of his heart. I didn't ask him to. But yeah, I recently added, or it was recently added, the LCD4 2021 pad measurements there, and that basically changes it to be a little bit closer to like the pre-memory foam pads, but it's also difficult for me to compare directly because it wasn't the same unit, and it was a totally different unit as well, so just interesting to note. And then also for my ranking list there, that's also linked in the description, so if you guys have purchase advice questions and you're wondering how things stack up for me, definitely just go check out that list because that'll save you some time. But with that out of the way, let's dive right into the Q&A session, and let's talk about headphone stuff, or just stuff in general. I'm going to start diving through the chat. You're looking at advice from the chat, Ace of Spades. Never mind me. I'm not important. You had 2 BEMP in the 1.5 to 2K used price. Okay, range. Ultrasonic Oblivion, WA-22, Amazon Sound Forge, Kind HA6A. You're pairing it with a 1266 Phi TC. Wow. VC, OG Clear, and LCD3/X. You have a lot of stuff. You that's yeah. And yeah, I'm not that I'm just getting into the tube amp stuff and have been. It's a fun world to get into, but there's a lot of stuff about that I just don't have experience with, right? I am finally getting some experience with the Forge, getting some listening time in. That thing is crazy. But there's also a new tube amp that we're collabing with Justin on, which is I think it's live actually now, which is basically bringing back the Lilu. So think of it like a pendant with like a pendant SE with speaker taps. But there's a little bit more to that story, so I'll do a video about that at some point, non-evaluative video about that at some point, and sort of compare that to the Forge. But that's what I have right here. It's off screen, you can't see it. So rest assured, I'm getting into the tube world a little bit more. I think for me, like my stance on that stuff is like, I do typically gravitate more to, you know, the sort of like solid state referencey kind of stuff, but absolutely loving diving into the tube world and just basically like writing off any sort of like preconceived notion about like correctness about low distortion and all that stuff, and just saying let's welcome it. let's just try these experiences and see how things go, because you know, at that point you're not really you're not really chasing that, you know, reference point dragon anymore. You're kind of just sort of accepting, you know, that there's more, that there's a different index for good, right? So and then you can, you know, it's almost freeing in a way, right? Because you're not, at least in my case, I'm not trying to like overanalyze things. I'm just enjoying things, which is great. But yeah. Started with Aria Stealth on a Saturday. You did? Oh, nice. How's the HE6 SE compared to the Aria? I'm not a fan of the 6 SE. There's one over there, actually. This is the HE6, the original HE6, 6-screw. And my biggest issue with the 6 SE, at least the ones that I evaluated, was that there's a very strong distance between like the mids and the upper mids. Like the upper mids are very prominent, up to like 3K. And I think the Aria is actually more balanced. That's my take. Now the V2, that's a different question, because the one I evaluated was actually quite a bit more normal. But I've seen some other measurements of the V2 that were also very similar to the V1. So that's interesting. I don't really know what's going on there. It could be a pad change. It could be some implementation difference between the two. I have no idea. But the one I evaluated was the V2 was better. So just interesting to note, and better than the Aria. I think you're probably going to get more consistent results with the Aria, but that V2 goes on sale to like 700 or something like that. Yeah, that's crazy. So just something to consider. I wouldn't, just to, you know, let you know, don't go for it at full price, right? Because the V2, when it's on sale, it drops dramatically. So keep that in mind. Crooked Hat, are you serious? Oh my god. That's the worst. Alright. Pathos. We saw a ton of those at Munich High End, and they are the craziest looking amplifiers. They look like spaceships. It's awesome. I didn't actually get to try anything off of those there. I think we actually have one in the office, but I didn't get a chance to listen off of those. But they're so visually striking. It's awesome. When's the next giveaway? Yeah, I'm not sure when we're going to be getting back into that. A lot of that is like it's a matter of process first to make sure that we're doing it the right way. But I hope that one day we will get back to doing that. I imagine we will. What's the difference between an amp and a DAC? So you're new to the scene. All right, so the DAC is the digital to analog converter, right? So think about the stuff that is zeros and ones turning into an analog signal. Then your amplifier is the thing that makes that louder. That's the most straightforward and incomplete way of describing it. But for someone who's new, that's probably the best way to think about it. So you need both. Just as it happens, oftentimes, well, generally speaking, the DAC has some sort of power there as well, but the outputs are not, you don't have like headphone outputs typically on a DAC unless it's a DAC amp combo, right? But yeah, you need both. So think of the chain like computer or whatever you're using, right? But in my case, for example, computer going to a DAC, and then there's outputs there. In this particular case, it's balanced XLR going out to the amplifier, which then has the headphone outputs on it. Hey Andrew, let me know when it's time for spicy questions because I have some for you today. Sure. Well, you can feel free to ask them whatever, right? So it's all good. It's always time for spicy questions or spicy takes, right? It can be opinions too. You can just like lay them out there. um, that's what this is all about, right? Passion for Sound just reviewed the Diana TC and it was a very positive review. I think I'm finally out. Oh, and it wasn't a very positive review. Interesting. It's one that I need to get in. The one that I heard in the condition that I heard it at Munich High End was very detailed. I think though that it's one of those things where it's like you got to decide if the tonality is right for you, because there's still a bit of that sort of like I don't know, W shape. I don't know how I would describe it. Or that's still something in the mids that is prominent. I don't know how to. Yeah. I don't know if we'll get one in, but yeah, if somebody decides to send one in, we will definitely cover it. So can you add some notion about how good the ANC is on the UX3000? Oh yeah, you saw my graph there on the UX3000. Yeah, so this is the funny thing, right? They told me at Munich High End, this is like the first time that I heard it, this is at the show, and this is why I was so, I requested to get it in, because like at the show, I was like, can you guys send me this to review, because this is awesome. And they told me that they specifically didn't include really strong ANC because they felt that detracted from the potential sound quality of the headphone. Now, whether they meant that from a tuning perspective, that there was some sort of limitation there, or if they meant that it killed any sense of technicalities or what they could do from a driver perspective, I have no idea. But the funny thing about that is when I got the headphone in and I was doing my initial impression, right? While I was doing my initial listening, I had them on and I had them paired to my phone, and I was actually doing photos in the studio just for something totally different, like completely unrelated. And so I had the stuff I was taking photos of, like on the desk with the lighting and everything, and I had my camera like up here and I'm doing all this stuff wearing the headphones. And it turns out like for way too long behind me, right? I think I'm in a studio alone, right, with the door closed. Behind me, Terrence crept up on me and is banging stuff against the wall, banging his cup against the wall, trying to like get my attention, and I didn't hear him. So as much as they've claimed that they focus more on sound quality than noise canceling, the noise canceling was clearly still effective at like making it so I wasn't distracted or couldn't even hear the stuff going on behind me. He was trying to like film, like he had his phone out and he was trying to like film me not hearing him, trying to get my attention, right? And just as he started to film, I noticed it and turned around, so it didn't turn into anything, but I thought that was kind of funny. So I'll need to do some like actual testing to see how good the ANC is, but at the moment, just from an indication, I think it's better than the NC700 or N700 NC Mark II from AKG. Not as good as the XM4s and not as good as the AirPods Max, if that kind of helps you stack it up. But the tuning and the overall sound is very much better than both of those. You don't get as many features. It's a much more simple device, so don't think that it's like competing on that front, but for sound quality, it is outclassing them for sure. But it's not the only one that outclasses them, right? Like I actually would argue that there's inexpensive stuff that outclasses those as well. Other inexpensive stuff that outclasses those as well. Okay, let's move on. Aria Stealth or V2. I thought the Stealth was better. I think it's going to depend on your age. The Stealth, I found that the upper treble was there was more, but that also made it more in line with where the rest of the ear gain is. And then also you get a little bit more. My unit anyways had a bit more low end. But I think you can't go wrong either way. They're very, very similar. Do you think the Focal Elegia is worth in 2022? I mean, if you can get it at a really inexpensive price, sure, yeah. I remember I always EQ'd the Elegia, right? So I think if you can get something that you don't have to EQ, that's better. But some people, they love it, like the mid forward character that it has, they're super into it. I remember at the time there wasn't really anything else that was out there like that kind of had that style of driver in a closeback, at least not that I could think of. And then since then, there's been other ones that have come out, right? Also from Focal, like the Radiance and the Celestia, right? So, and then now there's also highly competitive. I keep saying that the Aeon X closed from the Master Up one is probably the best thing for closeback at $500 that I've heard. It is a little bit dull and blunted for the detail, but it doesn't matter because the tuning is so good on that one. Like, if you're like asking, like, if I had $500 to spend on a closeback thing, right? That's probably what it would be. I mean, maybe that EMU Teak, and I need to try that one because that's at around that price too, right? But at the moment, for me, it is definitely that Aeon X close, not the open, the closed. Love the Munich content. There's more. There's a lot more. It's coming. There's gonna be one tomorrow, and then there's gonna be one during the week next week, and then there's gonna be one another 2 weeks after that. So it's just like we have so much stuff that we filmed that we're just kind of putting it together. What do you guys as a company get most out of these shows? Interaction with suppliers, seeing products, meeting customers. So it's different between, so like DMS and we were there just to do show coverage, right? That's it, right? Like and whether that's us trying stuff, so like there's a lot of that, like us trying stuff out, but also just like seeing what other people were checking out and doing interviews and that kind of stuff, right? So for, as far as what we do, for work, for content and stuff like that, that's what we get. That's the most of what we get out of those. Go to those events. I'm already losing my voice. This is terrible. But yeah, but as far as what I get sort of out of it personally, I think it's just because it's just these events sort of feel like once in a lifetime opportunities. I mean, maybe probably not, but like because of the pandemic and all the stuff that's been going on in the world, a lot of shows haven't really been going on, and now they're picking up again, and so it really feels like, wow, this is like a thing that you just have to sort of take it all in and experience the whole thing. So I know that's a cop-out answer, but like that's probably what I get the most. Like, I mean, and also just like hanging out with DMS and like just like shooting the shit and having fun and like traveling with those guys, it's a ton of fun. And so yeah, all of the expected answers. I don't know if that was expected, but yeah. What's up, Metal? Good to see you. Yeah, the HE6 SE V200 was $550 a couple weeks ago. That's crazy. I mean, make sure that it's all in good condition, right? But that's a screaming deal. If you get, like, again, the one that I evaluated was very, very good. So I don't know where I saw that measurement of it, but there was one that I saw where I was like, what is going on there? I feel like it was somebody who had like I'm just trying to think if it was Brent or if it was Amir. It was somebody else who has like a proper measurement rig, or has access to one, and they measured it, and they found that the V2 measured just like the V1 or the SE that I had, which is yikes. And the pads do help with that, so I recommend the Sundara 2020 pads with those. Let's see. $670. Oh, 370. Okay, that's with the Deconi sheepskin. For you're talking about the Elegia. 'Cause that would be pretty interesting. I did measure it. It does give it more bass, but it also kind of does things that to the rest of the FR that yeah. I mean, I think it's probably better overall, but like I would still EQ that. Should I get a 6XX, HE400 SE, or a Sundara? Sundara, hands down, easy, with an amplifier. You need an amplifier. Abyss, it's very detailed, but I mean, the one that I heard was just straight up better than the Phi that I heard, right? So it's like a pretty straightforward upgrade over that, in my view. But I also haven't kept up with the various different revisions that they've done on those. It's hard to get them in, right? And like the one, like when you get one sent in, it's like one that somebody owns, right? And they bought it like a year ago, and so you don't know if that's representative of the current version. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It's one of those where it's like, yeah, I'll need to get it in. I think it had a little bit of what I call that sort of Shakira effect. You know, it's funny. The UX 3000 also has a little bit of that. The sort of throaty vocals or singing like you're falling off a cliff, you know. But with the slight sort of swell in the mid range around 1K is kind of how I would describe that. But not overly so, right? Is the Blessing to Non-Dusk still a good buy in 2022? No, it's great, yeah. As is the Dusk. Hey, Resolve, hope you're well. I mean, as well as I can be. Still alive, right? I'm deciding between LCD XC and the Meze Lyric. I mean, listen to jazz, classical music with the occasional EDM. Any advice? Thank you so much. I would recommend getting into EQ. All right. With both of those, so the XC is the one that is the more technical. It's also quite a bit heavier, less comfortable because it's heavier. It's fine. I do use it all. It's my close backup choice. But that one, when you dial in with EQ just a little bit, it really shines because it is so technical. The Lyric is not as technical. I would say the tonal balance on its own is probably going to be more enjoyable because there is more low end. It's not as analytic. But it is also one where I ended up needing to EQ it because again, that sort of mid-range honk that it had. But very comfortable and it also it wasn't much that I needed to do, right? So I would say if you're not into if you're a no EQ gang kind of guy or person, I would then suggest the Aeon 2 Noir because that is one where the tuning is solid. It's just not as technical as the XC. Neither is the Lyric, right? The XC is on another level there. So depends on the person you are, I suppose. I'm not saying like go crazy with EQ, just like very small adjustments, right? Like adding a bass shelf, right? Or dropping the 1K honk. Are there any benefits to upgrading your amp? There are benefits to upgrading your amp if you have headphones that require more power, or if you like people want to do that for sound quality reasons. I would suggest if you're new, no, stick with good enough, put all of your money into headphones. If you don't have an amp, then yeah, get an amp. Or like a DAC and an amp. Yeah, get the good enough options that are like $400, right? They're not expensive, and then put your money into headphones. But I heard that sale amp at Munich High End, and it was one where I was like, yeah, like you guys know me, I don't get all that excited about amps and DACs and stuff like that. But that one, I was like, okay, this is something else. This is something different. And everybody who tried it was like, what the hell? So it definitely like subverted my, an understanding about like the differences that amps and DACs make, because I think it's that the majority of them don't really make much difference, like, or that there's very minimal difference. But then there are some of them where the difference is meaningful, and then you get people all kinds of riled up about that stuff. But that's also like I'm deep into the tube amps at the moment and learning about that world, and that stuff where it's like it is it has the potential to be dramatically different, like just completely change the soundscape that you're listening to. So, so to answer your question, yes and no. But if you're new, no. Oh, okay. If I have this Sandara with the Deconi velour pads, which are really comfortable, but secondhand, should I buy original pads for better original pads for better sound quality? It's the Sandara 2020 pads. The ones, so what I don't know when they actually changed over to those pads, but the pads that they use, they switched to, apparently they switched to it for durability reasons, to make sure that they didn't like fall apart, but in so doing, with different glue and different adhesive, it also changed the tuning for the better. I still think that those are the best pads, but I did not do the deep dive on Deconi pads on the Sandara, so it's something I'd have to check out. I'm using the 2020 pads on the HE6 right now, by the way, the Sandara pads. Have you heard the LCD-R? Yeah, I heard it, but I only heard it off of the what's the I always don't. Is it like the Jotunheim A or something? I forget the names, but the amp that comes with it, I only heard it off of that, and I was whelmed. Like it was fine. It just, I felt like it was being held back by the amplifier. And I saw some people kind of gushing about it online, and I feel like if it actually does sound that good, I think it's probably as a result of going pairing it with a different amplifier, something else, because that's a very unique. It's not technically a ribbon driver headphone. It's just a zero. It's a no impedance headphone, as far as I understand it. So you would use it off of a like a speaker amp of some kind. Let's see. What's next here? I think Andrew's going to intentionally skip reviewing the MM500 now after being asked that many times. I haven't been asked that many times honestly. I this is the first time I've been asked to review it. I definitely want to review the MM500. That is like, so knowing what that is, it is 100% on my radar. It's probably the thing that I'm most excited about at the moment to review. I don't know when we'll get it in, because that stuff, it doesn't always make it to reviewers right away. So yeah, I'll try and get it in, but I wouldn't expect to be the first. But it's at the top of my list for stuff that I'm like, yeah, I need to try that, because like, to me, the cool thing about that is it's like the trickle down effect of their LCD5 tech and like design to something like the LCD-X, which I have like right there, right for this. And the LCD-X, the 2021 version, was great. I mean, it's always had good performance, but the 2021 pad change and some of the changes that they made to the driver itself, it resulted in a lighter, more comfortable headphone that actually I thought it was the best tuned out of all of them. And so if they are able to kind of like iterate on that with some of the new tech that they have from the 5, which is talk to some of the folks from Audeze, it sounds like there's some of that going on. That is really exciting. So yeah, it's definitely on my radar. I mean, I'm always the one who's complained about the Audeze weight, right? Everyone, like, people who wear them, they're like, it's fine. What are you talking about, you necklet? But I'm like, 600, 700 grams is too much for me. But yeah. Will you be having Goldenrod on the show? I hope so. Yeah, we get to hang out with him at Golden. I think you mean Golden Sound. We get to hang out with him in Munich, and yeah, he's just like the coolest guy. Like he's awesome. So I definitely want to have him on the stream at some point. All right, spicy. Let's go. New headphones released in 2022 will have difficulties hitting the same price to performance ratio compared to older/existing headphones, based on increased costs and higher expected inflation. That is a take that I had not really thought about that much until now. I wonder I wonder though if you've maybe jumped the gun a little bit. Like I think 2022 is a bit. I think you're probably right, but 2022 might even be too early to see some of the effects of 2022's situation and before and 2021, because like sometimes these products take more than a year to develop, right? They take quite a bit of time. Some of them take 4 years to develop, 5 years, right? So yeah, so it's one of those things where like I think you're probably right, but I think we're going to see even worse effects of that in 2023. And in a way, it probably just means that our expectations need to be a little different, as inflation, hits us. The price points are different, especially for the new stuff. The crazy thing though is not all companies are increasing their prices. Well, many of them are. Sandara went down. The Aria went down. Right? I think the Aria is like 1,300 now. Don't quote me on that, but like I saw one recently for around 1,300, and then the Sandara I saw for 300. So it's like, it's like this stuff is for the most part, everything is going up. But then there are some companies who are like, whatever. Maybe they have an easier time with supply chain stuff. Maybe that's what's going on. But I don't know. Don't forget to skip the MM500 review. Will the MM500? Oh my god! Now I see them. Okay. Yes, I will be reviewing the MM500 when I can get a hold of one. I will reach out. I will be trying to get a hold of one. I'm very hyped for that headphone. Let me make that as clear as possible. Yeah, I want to. I mean, people are asking me to review the XM5 as well. And it's the same story. Like I do want to, but I wasn't gonna take Best Buy up on their offer to send us one in advance. And it sold out. It was sold out everywhere, so I couldn't get one. Yeah, it's they were offering like $1,000 to basically chill it. No comparisons to other products were allowed. Not allowed to say anything negative about it. And then you get some commissions. So that's basically the norm for the early reviews. I think for a lot of this stuff, not all of it. Right? I don't want to say that everybody's like that, but for people who are getting it in advance through some of these agencies or some of these programs, that's typically what's going on. And we just said no to that. But we did buy one. It's just that we weren't able to do that until like recently. So I think there's one on its way maybe to Chrono. So he will be doing the review of the XM5. I'll be measuring it, of course, and I'll be talking about it, I'm sure. But yeah, he will be doing the review of that one, I think, and then I think I will be doing a review of the UX3000. So, and I'll be comparing it. Let's continue. Have I missed any spicy takes here? I'm trying to, or just like hot takes in general. Questions. Okay, thoughts specifically on the collaboration with Manny Marroquin. Is it more of a cash grab / sponsorship thing, or did he actually help tune it? I don't know. I also don't have that many thoughts on that. The one thing though that I think is going on is they're trying to do a lot to sort of capture the attention of the pro audience. It's actually a fairly large crowd. And it's the kind of folks who I think fit with, the price points that their stuff is at, and I think they're kind of targeting that. So in many ways, it makes sense to brand it with the name of somebody like that. By the way, I don't know anything about who that is. I know nothing. I'm not into Kendrick Lamar, right? Somebody's gonna hate me for saying that, but like I do not like any of that stuff. Like I'm not gonna hate on it, but like it's not my choice of music. So I don't know anything about it, right? Um, but it's one of those things where they probably saw an opportunity to continue to go after that audience, and then it makes sense. I have no problems with it. Like, it's the same thing like when people were like, "Oh, I would buy the Radiance if not for the Bentley logo," and I think I don't care. Like, I it's doesn't matter to me if something is Bentley branded or Lexus branded or whatever, right? Like, it's just a name, right? Or and a logo. It doesn't have any effect on like the sound, right? I think it's a bit different with this in this case if this person actually had some influence on the tuning, if it was tuned to his preferences for the way that he wanted to work with stuff. So I don't know. The LCD5 was tuned to Cat's taste apparently, so MM probably did involve him, and apparently was used to mix. Yeah, used to mix the new Kendricks. Exactly. I'm not a fan of tunings that are anchored to, like, well, there might be a pro use for some of this stuff, but it's not a tuning that I wouldn't EQ, right? To put it that way. But this is why I'm kind of curious, well, very curious, because if it's meaningfully different from the 5, which from the impressions that I've read, there is a difference apparently in the tuning, then that kind of goes to show like we got to think about like the process for this a little bit and figure out, okay, what is the optimal tuning for a pro environment. I have some thoughts on this, but it's something where I wonder what Audeze's approach to that is. I mean, I could guess what their approach to that is. It's interesting as well because I was talking to Michael Tsale about this, because he has a background from the pro mixing and mastering console world, and we were sort of talking about the same thing, and it just sort of made me think about the differences between consumer targeted tunings, which the sole purpose was to get out of the circle of confusion, and the, let's say, audio pro mixing mastering nerd situation. That's not to denigrate them, but like, you get the idea, right? Like, the idea that there would be a difference there is weird to me, but I'm sure there's a way that makes sense, right? So maybe that's a conversation to have with somebody from Audeze to see sort of what the thinking is there. Andrew only likes smart people music, which means Nirvana, one of the greatest bands of all time, is unacceptable. Yeah, I do not like Nirvana. I mean, technically, I would say Kendrick Lamar is smart people music, right? Just like lyrically, right? But no, I'm not into Nirvana or Kendrick. But it's fine if you are. Sam, thank you. Many thanks for your EQ settings on the LCD XC. They're my endgame closeback. Dope. Glad you like it. Radiohead is better than Nirvana? I would agree. Radiohead actually does something interesting musically. We've gone down this road before. You guys know. Nirvana's grunge. Who's ready for sound quality? Yeah, that's yeah, yeah, and that's the point, right? Like, grunge and Nirvana is a musical statement that is the much more accessible version of black metal. But it's funny because like you can look at like the musical statements that they're making, like those ideas, like they're like philosophical ideas, kind of like the Andy Warhol soup cans thing, or just in music. They're very similar statements. Just one is particularly horrific to listen to, and the other one's just bad. That's my spicy take. Oh, hey, what's up, Golden? Yeah, there's further videos coming. We'll have one out tomorrow, I think, and then there's going to be one next week, and then one after that as well. There's at least 3 more videos coming, potentially 4. It's just that we've been, it's taken time to edit. I don't have an opinion on Austrian audio because I haven't heard their stuff. So. Uh, oh, I see Last Rhino's spicy question. What happened there? Yeah, um, yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation. But honestly, like if you read through that whole thread, I would just suggest if anybody wants to know about that stuff, read through the whole thread. I don't want to comment on it here, um, because it's not fair to just give my perspective, right? It's worth seeing both perspectives. Um, but but the one thing I will say, just to make sure that it's crystal clear to people, is that they did not ask us to change the sentiment of anything. All right, so that's not what it's about. It's they just asked to be absent. And yeah, it's just one of those where, like, things were actually fairly reasonable. We both sort of understood each other. We've spoken about it, and we obviously have a different perspective, and that's fine. Sometimes that's just how things go. And then obviously the whole thread went off the rails, and I had to lock it. But yeah, if anything, it just got me in that sort of like in the chest feeling of like, this is just not, this sucks. And I hope that all parties can sort of just sort of agree to disagree and then move on. That's how I would characterize that. But I'm not going to talk anymore about that stuff here without them present or being able to kind of like express their position as well. Let's see. What's the dumbest smart people artist? I know what you mean by that. Like, I definitely listen to a lot of stuff that I would consider like guilty pleasure, right? Like, but I don't know if I would call it a dumb smart people artist. Like the other day, I was listening to In Flames, because now, I don't think that that's particularly great music or anything like that, but I have a really strong sort of nostalgia connection to that music from when I was a kid, especially the older albums like Clayman, and they recently remastered and redid it. And I was listening to that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm back into this stuff. Or like another one was like Killswitch Engage, right, where it's like, I listened to like their very first album again because I remember that stuff from my childhood, and I don't take it seriously these days as a like musical expression, but I loved that music when I was a kid, so I perfectly happy to sort of indulge that, right? I don't think that you need to. Gesture is another one. Yeah, that's the older. I won't say the name of my favorite album, but yeah. But that's the thing, right? Like, you don't need to always listen to stuff that you take seriously. You can, like, and the same thing goes. There's a parallel there with like the equipment that you're using, right? There's like your super analytical, like referencey kind of stuff, and then you can dive into stuff that is like just like tube amps and totally wild and weird and just like guilty pleasure. And there's no universal index for good for what people enjoy. There's certainly some sort of indication for what's bad. I said this on a forum thread a while ago, but like, there's an indication from this stuff for what's bad, but that doesn't say anything about how people are going to enjoy things. And like, my guilty pleasure, I say it all the time, is like the Alire off of a 32 ohm out, Alire with Utopia pads off a 32 ohm out from Mackenzie, and it's like, I love the way that sounds. I don't think it's correct. I don't think it's like, reference or anything like that, but I don't care. It's just fun. So yeah. Chrono, what about One Direction? Yeah, that's the real smart person music. I can't think of anything else that really fall into that category, but here's another spicy take of mine. John Mayer is a very talented musician. There's gonna be people like, what? He's got a bad reputation for some of the sappier stuff that he did in the past, but man, he's a good musician. All right, same with Stephanie Germanotta, Lady Gaga. They're very good musicians. She's a fantastically talented vocalist. I'm not particularly into the top 40 style of music that she did, when she was doing all that stuff, but I'm not going to deny that she's unbelievably good. So, Rage Against the Machine. Love me some Rage Against the Machine. I listened to Rage Against the Machine off of I can't remember which track it was, but off of the Focal Grand Utopia, like the $500,000 system that they had set up at the in the venue, sort of across from. Well, it was like in a separate space, basically. And man, that was awesome. Yeah, this is an HE6 original, well, six screw HE6. Um, Seems like you missed some spicy stuff. Not really spicy. It was unnecessarily dramatic, I think. But yeah, Chrono saw John Mayer. Uh, yeah, he was telling me about that. You ever listen to Lepers? Yes, the new this past release. It's great. It's his singing style is not. It's a bit much sometimes, but it's awesome. Really great. Well done recordings, and yeah, really nice. But I'm just getting into Devin Townsend's Empath, which is also like this. It's like weird and esoteric, but crazy production, and like some of the more intense tracks on that album are nuts. Like I was listening to the song "Hear Me." I think I after listening to it, I messaged Metal. I was like, dude, you gotta listen to that. But it's just like it's one of those things that's just so intense and overwhelming. You're just like you can't help but just sort of like feel stunned after listening to it. And I had to listen to it like 3 more times. I was like, wow. But it's a great album, and it took me a little like I first started listening to it, I was like, that's a bit weird, and then like I really started to get into it and pay attention, like sit down, not just have it in the background, right, but like really start to pay attention to what Devin Townsend's doing there, for some of the ideas, and it's really good. That whole album reminds me of, like, in a very different way, it reminds me of like Pink Floyd's The Wall, where there's that sort of really like that overly bombastic kind of feel to the whole thing. Like it just, the whole thing feels more than just an album, and I get that feeling from it. So yeah. Best headphones you listened to in Munich high end was definitely the Warwick Acoustic Superior. I mean, it's like $35,000 for that system, so it's very expensive. And it's a whole, like, you get the system and the headphones, but that was crazy. And the funny thing is, there were people who I was with who liked the Bravura more. DMS liked the Bravura more, and that was only like, I think, 7,000, something like that. So I think I understand why, though. It's because the tuning of the Aperio was like really well suited to my flavor of jazz, and maybe not quite as versatile, right? So the Bravura was the more versatile one, but the Aperio was clearly the more detailed one. It was nuts. XS versus 1990. Definitely the XS. As Metal says, at this point, I'd say the 1990 should never be blind purchased. It's too aggressive in the treble. Yeah, try before you buy. That's that if you can. Yeah. I would take the Edition XS, hands down. Golden says, I like the Bravura more from the tuning standpoint. Yeah, exactly. And the resolution on the Aperio was insane. Yeah, they were telling us, like, there was like some actor who had like multiple of them because he wanted one for his trailer or something like that. It's like, wow, to be in that position. Headphones I would never be able to own, but yeah, it's just ridiculous. I still need to try the Stax X9000. I didn't get a chance to. I was in the room with it there, but there was just a lot going on, and a lot of people were lining up to try it, and so I just didn't get a chance. But yeah, hopefully get the Stax in at some point, because I think that'll also be like, I'm expecting it to be, on the same level, or like, on the level of those crazy high E-stat, high performance E-stats. Meze 109 seems promising. Yes, so that was, as I said before, like, that was the one that was like, it was in the back of my mind. It's the one that, like, I want to own. Out of all of the stuff that I heard there, I mean, yeah, I would love to own many of the things that I heard there, but more realistically, right, the stuff that's actually in reach for me, would be the 109. And everyone who heard it really liked it. So I hope that I hope I get to hear it again soon. Um, Maybe once it releases. I don't know. Let's see what's next. If EQ'd properly, 1990 or XS, still XS. It's easier to EQ. um, Ananda or Edition XS. That's a tough one. I think actually they're very close. The Edition XS I think is better value, but there are people for who the Edition XS, like the headband is too loose, like they don't have the right head shape for it. It's, yeah, subjective head shapes, and they find the Ananda is actually a better fit. I found the Edition XS was like perfect for me because I got a big head, right? So if you have a big head, Edition XS. If you have a small head, go with the Ananda. Maybe base it around that. But the XS has a lower resonance frequency, so even if you don't get a perfect seal with it, you're getting more bass, unless you don't want that, right? Ananda, I think, is still a little bit. It's a little bit more neutral, but they're very close. The Aria is definitely the more like you can going across them all. You go to the Aria, it's like, okay, this one actually has all the depth and detail and all that stuff. So I mean, they're all good for that. The Edition XS has a very wide soundstage, but the Aria is the one that has like the layering and the depth, and it's just there's more. Tiger versus 1990. Good question. I hadn't thought about that one. The Tiger's like, okay, the tuning of the Tiger is weird. Like the default tuning, I think needs EQ. It's like it's this very strong mid bass, upper bass kind of V-shaped thing. But it's actually detailed, like reasonably detailed. So I'd say for the majority of the tuning, the 1990 is better. But I mean, the Tiger's not as stabby, not as 8K-ish, 8.5K. It's still a little stabby, but in a way that I think was a little more tolerable. But yeah, the 1990 I think is probably more balanced for most of its FR. I wouldn't get either, to be honest, but at least the Tiger I think is appropriately priced. It's good value. Haven't tried the DT990. Oh, 900 Pro X. Do you want to? I'll send it over. I really, really did not like the 900 Pro X. Where does it sit in the Beyer conversation? I think underneath all of them. I think it is. The tuning is decent. I'll give it that, but it's just very dull and smeary. Both of those new ones, the 900 Pro X and the 700. I mean, the 700 I'd forgive it because it's a closeback. I just would not take that over K371. What amp are you using with the HE6? Right now, the IHA6. I mean, it's made for that headphone, but also it's not like it's fairly old now at this point. Like, I'm not sure if I would really recommend this in 2022. It's just that it's got like tons of power, right? From the balanced output specifically for the HE6. So, yeah, I mean, it's fine for this. I think there's too much noise floor for other headphones. When there's other amplifiers out now, like the Rebel amp, that I would probably take over the IHA6 at that price. Yeah, I'm talking about it right now. I see your question there. But for if you need tons of power for this type of planar, it is still a good amplifier for that, right? It is still capable. Which is another reason why I like that Synad question is really dumb because, or well, I don't know. It's not a dumb question. It's more that I kind of see it as the noise component as a measure of versatility, because if you are somebody who owns an HE6 and that's all you're trying to drive, the noise component is irrelevant. You're never going to hear it unless it's like really bad, right? But you know, it's the same thing that I said at the very beginning with this amplifier. You know, if it doesn't make sense, like the single ended outputs are kind of like weird, because they are like for normal headphones, right? This amplifier doesn't make sense. But for very specific headphones where you're trying to do specific things with output impedance, or you know, the balanced power output. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Just know what you're buying and why. No, Precog got to try the X9000, I think. Or no, maybe it was the L700. Either the L700 or X9000. He got to try a Stax in Singapore. So read his Singapore article. I think he said that the tuning, I think it was the L700 maybe. Maybe I'm misremembering what it is. But he said, yeah, the technical performance was crazy, but the tuning was wonk. And so like but it didn't matter because of how good the technical performance was. So it makes me want to hear it even more, right? Because I definitely trust Precog's takes. Let's see. Oh yeah, Chrono has the XM5 in the house. So yeah, he'll be that's the thing, is he's got all of the noise canceling headphones. So because he's been comparing them, so he'll have a really good frame of reference for all that stuff. Have you heard the newly announced Audeze MM500? What do you think? No, I don't know when we'll get that one in, but I definitely want to. It's high on my list, as I was saying. Do you prefer planars or dynamics, or what about electrostatics? I like all. They all have their strengths, but for the things that I like, the things that I index for the most, it tends to be planars. So like detail and separation and control and all that stuff, tightness, plucked. Yeah, I tend to prefer planars, but not all planars. There are some that there's situations where I'm like, yeah, I would take this dynamic driver headphone over this planar, right? And that's also changing. Like over time, I'm finding myself more drawn to really punchy dynamic driver headphones, and or just I'm finding myself learning to appreciate other qualities as well. So I don't want to say that uniquely across the board I prefer planars, even though that's what we're making. um, I see you're asking about the IE600. To me, it was just the treble I couldn't get past. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask about that. I think I would say check out. I'm not sure if Precog has his review out yet, but there will probably be a review out at some point, and I think he has more context for the other ones. Oh, what's up, El Jefe? Good to see you. Listening with the Edition XS, nice. Golden likes the X9000. Yeah, I mean I need to. It's also up there on the radar, but like anyone wants to send me one to check out, right? It's like it's hard to. We can't always have access to everything, right? Tom, thanks. For pure sound quality, resolution, and detail for at-home listening, would you pick the Stelia or Aria V3? And is the LCD5 the best stock-tuned Audeze? So let's start with the last question there. I think no. It is the one that is the well. Those two, the LCD5 and the Carbon, are very different from the other ones. And used to be that the Audeze tunings were kind of dark, or like they had no upper mids. Now it's got all upper mids. So my answer there is no. I still think that the best tuned Audeze is the LCD X 2021. For the overall sort of balance that it has. But compared to the 4, the LCD5 is clearly better tuned. I know some people prefer the 4, but I'm going to go and say that like it is much easier to EQ the 5 than the 4. At least it was for me. And yeah, to answer the other questions, for at-home listening, Stelia or Aria. Okay, if you need a closeback, Stelia. If you don't need a closeback, you can spend less money and get the Aria. They're different though. The Stelia is that warm, or bassy, punchy kind of thing. The Aria is that very separated, spacious, detailed kind of thing. So decide what matters more to you. Are there any alternatives to SA6 in the same price range? Yes. The Blessing 2 and Blessing 2 Dusk. There's tons in that price range. The Moondrop Variations. I prefer the SA6. It's just my kind of tuning. I prefer less ear gain because I find most good IEMs to be shouty. But, if you can handle the ear gain of the Variations, it's definitely more detailed, right? That is a very good IEM. The Oracle is great, too. Oh yeah, no worries on the MM500. Everyone's asking about that. Do you think the OG HE6 is worth $1,200, or I'd better get an Aria or LCD-X? The only downside with the OG HE6, which is what I'm wearing, is remarkable. There are two issues with it. Three, but two ones you got to think about. One is you can only buy it used. Right, and that means that you don't know what's happened, how it's been used in the past. If someone's tried to overdrive it like crazy, there are risks involved with buying used always, and that's why for me it's like, we did it, but it's something that is, you need to be comfortable with that, that there's always a risk. The second is I think you probably also need to get you need to figure out which pads you're going to get, because the default pads I don't think are ideal for it. Some people say they prefer the Susvara pads. I think the Sundara 2020 pads are better. The HE400 SE pads are all right, but I would not use the default pads there. I suppose the third issue is it's a heavy headphone. The Aria is more comfortable, but I guess the LCD-X is also heavy. So it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because I actually have both of those headphones here, the LCD-X 2021 and the HE6. My plan this weekend was to sort of compare the two, to sort of see how they stack up. So right now I'm just on the HE6. I haven't got the LCD-X yet. My assumption, and so take this with a heaping pile of salt, is that I think the HE6 is the more technically impressive one, but there are people who are going to prefer the tuning of the LCD-X because it's a little bit more relaxed. And of course, with the HE6, you need a ridiculous amplifier, something very powerful. Well, I guess not that ridiculous, but like ridiculous enough where you need to think about it and put money towards it. Whereas an LCD-X, you can run it off of a much wider range of equipment. So that's how to frame it. But yeah, the HE6 is crazy good. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Carbon, but I think it's one of those things where it's like if you run it off of the right thing, then eStats they always have that extra sort of caveat that it's like sources probably matter for this stuff. Whether it's eStats, whether it's that AMT from Head, or whether it's the ribbon stuff, or like the LCD-R, that's one that requires some asterisk that like whatever assessment there is, it's like it all depends on the source. Gil, thanks. What's your question? Feel free to ask and I will try. All right, it's time for spicy takes. We'll have spicy hour. You're debating between Edition XS and Sundaras. Is the higher price worth the value of the Sundaras? That depends on the person. I think Edition XS is very competitive. I think it's worth it over the Sundara. Sundara is great. It's a fantastic headphone. It's what I recommend at that price over basically everything else. But I don't know. If you want more, like bigger soundstage, you go for Edition XS. If you want more neutral, I would actually say the Sundara is more neutral, or what I consider to be neutral. Because what is that, right? Yeah, Sundara is a super clever design. Both of those are clever designs, but the Sundara is the one where I go like, that's whoever designed this, whoever's coming up with the integration of the driver, they were thinking. Clever ideas. If it was intentional. Um, what's better in customs than universals? I don't know what you mean. You mean like in-ear headphones? I tend to go with universals just because like that's what most people are getting. Because customs, it's like there's an extra process, but it also probably depends on the IEMs. Because I know there's some where actually the universals are better than the customs. For how much would you sell your known good HE6? $3,000. No, I'm just kidding. No, this isn't actually my personal unit. This is the company's, and we bought it just because we wanted to have it as a reference point, to have on hand, and just in general, to compare stuff to. This is one of Taryn's dreams, is to have one of every headphone, or every, not like every headphone, but like, you know what I mean, like all headphones that are worth talking about. Because there's some stuff like you can buy headphones at the grocery store, but like all real headphones, right? Yeah, the dream is to have one of everything, and this is a very important one. Do headphones that wowed you maintain their wow factor, or are you always chasing something new? That's a very good question. There are some that do, but I find that I also need to normalize to something else before I go back to them and go wow again. So, DMS made a great video on this, pardon me, a while ago on his own channel, about how you're always going to end up, chasing the the gear dragon, and I think there's definitely truth to that. At a certain point, I think it depends on the person as well, because for some people, they'll buy something and then they'll completely leave the hobby, and they'll be happy, super happy, and they won't come back to it until many years later. That's one sort of approach, and I think for those people, yeah, maybe they lose the wow factor, but they don't care that they've lost the wow factor because they're normalized. They just still enjoy it. And if you have like prolonged exposure, like as in like you're listening for a long time, that wow factor is of course going to go away because you're so normalized to it. It just starts to sound normal. But if you're somebody who like listens for an hour a day, and you're not listening to headphones the rest of the day, then probably you retain a lot of that. So that's also one of the reasons why I tell people, just like, if you want to be like efficient with your money in this hobby, you buy a K371 and quit, or you buy a Sundara and an amplifier and quit, or a 6XX and an amplifier and quit, right? And because it's the more you get, it's how you become a headphone reviewer, right? Like you the more you research stuff and read stuff, and the more you follow the trajectory of headphones that are developed, headphone companies, the more you acquire more stuff, and you are trying to just find something new at that point, right? Constantly. But that can be fun too, right? It's why I do it in many ways. I'm trying to find what's up? Gustavo's in the chat. I'm trying to find Gil's comment here, or Gil's question, because he donated. But there it is. I see it. There seems to be tons of innovation in in IEM transducers versus headphones. What's the next headphone transducer innovation? Good question. So I still think there's a lot to be done. So do you mean specifically in IEMs, or do you mean like just in general, right? Because I think right now in IEMs there seems to be two trends that are kind of happening. One is there's a lot of companies trying to come out with that all important great dynamic driver, like single dynamic driver IEM. And so you see companies like Sennheiser, Dunu, Moondrop. They're all trying to compete in that single dynamic driver world, because there's some advantages that you have over multi BA. You get a better sense of dynamic impact. You get more natural timbre. Realistically, like as far as like the measured stuff is concerned, you don't have to deal with elevated third and elevated fifth harmonic distortion issues that you commonly have to with balanced armature setups. So there's a desire to chase that in IEMs. At the same time, there's also a lot of really cool stuff that's being developed with planar tech in IEMs. The 7 hertz timeless. Kryn did a great video on this, right? He called it the future. I don't think it's the future. I think it's the current trend, but it is also a trend that has kind of demonstrated a lot of improvement. And so I think we'll eventually be at a place where planar IEMs are as competitive, if not more so than the hybrid and tribrid and multi-BA configurations. I don't think we're there yet, but they're definitely on the rise. And stuff like this, the Wrapped Go hook, which I was like, not expecting this to be anything all that, I was expecting it to be interesting from a tech standpoint, but like I was expecting the tuning to be very strange, and it is super normal. Like apart from like one area in the treble, like in the mid treble, right? It's a little bit forward there, but for the most part, it's a very normal, in a good way, kind of tuning, and it caught me off guard because this is a planar plus piezoelectric piezo. I don't know how to say that driver. So really, there's been interesting innovations there. From a just overall general transducer innovation standpoint, all of the respective technologies can still be improved. That's sort of my general take on that stuff. Because as we're learning, there's a lot that goes into even the well understood concepts, the well understood designs. With that said, you do in the over-ear headphone world see innovation in like what Head Audio is doing with their motion transformer, full range AMT, and then also what folks like Danny from RAL are doing with the ribbon stuff, which I'm so excited to hear that, or again to try that circumaural RAL, the CA. I think he called it the CA1A at the time, but I'm not sure if that's probably a running name. I'm not sure that's going to be the final name. But when that gets released, that is also very much on my radar because it was very interesting. Beyond that, I'm not that aware of all that much else from a transducer innovation standpoint that's going on in the headphone world, other than just more stuff from like the Warwick acoustic stuff is a unique way of doing electrostatic systems, right? It's still ESTAT technically, but it's very different from other ESTAT types. You guys can hear the cops in the background. This week has been like emergency vehicle, like maybe not National Emergency Vehicle Day, but it felt like it. Yesterday I counted there were 9 emergency vehicles as I was driving to and from the office. 9 emergency vehicles for different things and in different areas. I was like, wow, something's going on today. XS has officially replaced the Ananda then? No, they both still exist because they are different. I hesitate to say that one is better than the other because of the wearing style and the wearing situation, right? Because people have come out and said that they can't even wear the Edition XS because it's too big, right? which is fair enough. But for my big head, it's more comfortable than the Annette. um, will the Sindar pair well with the topping DX5 and the Magnus? Yes, you are fine. Are you listening to anything with the headphones on, or why are they on? They're on because I feel better about life with headphones on my head than wearing nothing at all. I've become one with the headphones. No, it's just like my regular, work situation is to sit here and listen and have headphones on. It's a normal day for me. um, Rob, thank you. Any word on the Dunu Vulcan? I think Precog has a review coming out soon on that. Precog Vision. So stay tuned for that one. It might just be an article, though. I'm not sure. What else? JTB, thank you. Would the Ross and Rad Zero be a complement to this collection of headphones, or a repetitive headphone with one of these? HE1000 SE, Verite closed, HE6 SE V2. All of those are very different. So it would be a compliment. Yeah. In a way, it's like, HE1000 SE is like the bright and detailed, right? And the Rad Zero is very much a totally different flavor of, like, it's much more warm, less intense, less upfront, less ear gain. Yeah, it's very different. That's interesting. So answer there is more complimentary than redundant. Let's see. And trust us, you don't want to become a headphone reviewer. people don't necessarily realize the pain that comes with being a headphone reviewer. It's a great gig, don't get me wrong. I love talking about headphones and nerding out about that stuff, but it does come with a lot of vitriol. If you're critical about something that somebody loves, right, it's they take it very personally, and that's yeah. Chin straps. Yeah, you gotta have like a headphone that like goes around your head like a football helmet. Can you expand upon your take on the RAL prototype? What did it specifically fix? I don't know about fix. It's just like it's a circumoral, which is one that, like, the biggest issue for me with the RAL SR1A was the wearing style. It's just very, like, some people are totally fine with it, right? But it is a strange thing. I think that's a pretty reasonable take. And I much prefer coupling. With coupling, I think you also get a little bit. You have potential for a little bit more low end or more linear response in the bass. So I think that's why that's really interesting to me. Dune Vulcan is interesting to me as well. Yeah, I'm excited to hear that one. Diego, thank you. Can you upload these streams to your Apple podcast? Yeah, once we get someone to actually, rip the audio from these. Right now, it's just that whole process is just, yeah, we already have so much on our plates that, like, I just don't have time for it. But yeah, eventually, if there's someone who can do that, we'll upload them. The police are surrounding Andrew's house. Yes. I said something mean about headphones they like. Amir has your Focal Clear MG Pro. Oh man, I hope that the pads were good. Be careful about the volume that he tests that stuff at. So one was like 134 dB. It's just crazy. Maybe just to be like, hey, what happens when you do this? Like, can you destroy a driver by driving at 134 dB? But I found that on the Utopia and the Clear, the clipping threshold was like 107 to 110 dB. So that's also way louder than anybody should ever listen. Let's see. Bought an LCD X 2021 edition after buying pre-2020 version, being disappointed because it was really wonky tuned. But I felt like the 2021 was very similar to the pre-2020. I think it would be more similar to the pre-2020 version, yeah. But I'm not totally sure what you mean, because, okay, so, and this is why the dates for the stuff, they need to just come out with model years. Or some clear indication of what version is what, because there was only really one, wonky, super wonky tuned version of that, which was the memory foam version. And I don't think that was specifically in 2020. I don't think it's when it started. I think it started before that, but people called it the 2020 version. But you could have had so yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know if you had a pre-2020 version before they did the memory foam, or if it was a memory foam version, because that was also, I think, technically pre-2020. But sounds like you had one that was before the memory foam, and then the subsequent follow-up 2021 stuff is closer to that. The one thing with that, though, is that, yeah, I mean, they still had a frequency response that was more relaxed, right? Like, if you think about what is like objective correctness from Harman, they did not follow Harman, right? They still had that, recessed upper mids to a certain degree, and if you want something closer to that, you'd be looking for, the Hifiman stuff. There's typically more ear gain there, but that's why folks like Metal and myself would just EQ it. And that I know that, like, there's that thought process of or connection between Audeze and great technical performance, but got to EQ, and I think that's sort of still continued. My hope is that the new MM500 kind of like change that, but that collective understanding by the community, I think, is accurate and continues to be accurate. Do you think the Aeon Noir is good for mixing purposes in complement with Focal Clear for bass? Otherwise, which closeback would you recommend? I think the Aeon Noir is fine for mixing purposes. It's pretty, when you're doing mixing, like, I think, this is just my take on this, like, I think there's other perspectives and other ways to use headphones in a professional manner, but I think I would choose stuff that is ideally referencey or normal, so that the stuff that you produce is going to end up sounding referencey and normal, right? There's probably reasons to do some more corrective work, like if you're like, okay, I'm going to put on this headphone that I know is like extra bright or has this overemphasized range. I'm doing this intentionally so that the mix that I come out that is my output sort of has compensated for that, so that it's on more normal equipment, it has that effect of being more relaxed in that particular region, right? So there's reasons to do that kind of stuff, for sure. But as a general pro use headphone, I would aim for stuff that's more normal sounding. Yeah. Flavor, yes, I eat headphones, of course. Who doesn't eat headphones? That's really what we're buying them for, and that's why we have to keep buying them. Headphones are to be ingested. Any opinion on the upcoming Meze 109 Pro headphones? Yeah, we did some videos on that. Check that out. Or did an interview with Antonio Meze. Here's a spicy take. The NTH 100 is garbage and the hype was silly. I don't disagree. I mean, it had good build quality. I liked the mechanical design on it. It was cool. Looks good, but the sound is not nothing to take serious, I think. Kind of feel the same way about like those Neumann headphones, right? Like they should be good, but there's just nothing special about them. Just sounded, kind of dull. Um, what do you not like about the sound of the A90? No, I love the sound of the A90. The A90 is fantastic. Not a bad word from me on the A90. It was ever been spoken. uh, Waiting for that DMS review of the Atrium. Yeah, check out his channel if you want to see info on that one, because he is working on that at the moment. You have an onion in your hand, but not an opinion. So when are you getting your Acco tactile switches? Remind me. No, wait, I want to... Wait, are those the ones that are like softer than the U4Ts? Because my hands hurt. Save my hands. All right. Let's continue. I don't know if I'm gonna do the I wanted to do the keyboard crossover thing as well, because I am also into keyboards, right? Like my desk is full of switches and keycaps, uh, you know these ones, and I've been planning on sort of doing that on the channel for a while, but I need to have the right vehicle for video, something that makes sense, right? And I just haven't really found that yet. So it's on the radar. That's something I want to do. I have a couple of things in mind, comparing like a GMMK Pro versus a the drop, one of the drop keyboards. Comparing switches. I have thoughts on the debounce issues, but the thing is that like there's a lot of folks out there who have already covered these very well, and so if I'm going to talk about this stuff and get into it, I need to do it in a way that actually contributes something new to the conversation, and I just have not fleshed my thoughts out sufficiently for that. I think if anything, it would be the debounce issue, and it's just a problem. Like I'm still waiting on Drop to fix that. Like the switches can feel as good as they can feel great, but if you're getting double presses and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. It's like buying a watch that doesn't work half the time. Hey, look, a fellow HE6 user. Are you an HE6 user? Yeah, HE6 is great. DCA Stealth is my example of a headphone that should be really good, but I just can't. Did you try it off of the tail amp? There are times when I've heard the Stealth where I've gone like, okay, this is very interesting. But my main issue with it was that the wearing style for me made it shouty. Like the best position for me for comfort, it kind of was not the best for the tuning. So yeah. Yeah, what's funny is there's probably a lot of people out there who are like, their end game setup is like a DCA Stealth with the topping A90, which I think is kind of hilarious, right? Like, I would much rather listen to the Stealth off of like some of Justin's tube amps, right? Well, I mean, also the Sail, but it sounded the best you've ever heard it off of the HM1. Yeah. Yeah. I spent more time with the Aeon Noir, which also sounded fantastic on that amp. Um, but yeah, like for me, like I would rather do the sacrilegious thing and take the objectively excellent headphone and put it on the based on our current understanding of that, right? Based on target adherence, and run it off of something that is off of a tube amp or something like that, to give it a bit of flavor. Because again, I like to eat my headphones. You have the drop control, but you would do something else. You would go with something else if you had to do it again. Um, yeah. So they sent me one because they offered, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to cover it. And then um, I had all those issues with the like debounce and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, I don't know if this is working as intended, and I don't want to just put out a video if it's not representative. So it's been a long time, but like I want to get to the bottom of that. Make sure I can I don't want to create like false narratives. Basically, like doing diligence on this stuff is important. So with all that said, the switches, the Holy Pandas, I think they're called, I thought were great, as long as they weren't responsible for the issues that I was having. I liked the feel of the Holy Pandas more than the Boba U4Ts. How about that for a spicy take? Literal keyboard warriors are going to be mad at that one. But I'm using the U4Ts right now in my drop GMMK Pro. Or in my, not drop, in my, what is Glorious. Glorious. Um, any thoughts on DSD versus the PCM debate? Yeah, you guys should all make sure you're listening to MQA. No, just kidding. No, I don't get into that stuff. Like I use Qobuz and Spotify and streaming services, and I'll just use whatever is the best for that. I don't use Tidal anymore, and it's not even because of the MQA thing, even though that would be a reason to not use it. But I don't use it because in my region it was just all constantly buffering, and I was like, well, they're not competitive in this region, so I'm just not going to use it anymore. And I moved over to Qobuz, but now I'm not using it because again it's not available in my region. I had it for a brief like couple of months, and then now I can't. So I'm sad about that. And so right now I'm on Spotify, which is sacrilege, but it's convenient. And of course I'm talking about the high tier. Oh, and also I was using Amazon Music. I still have Amazon Music, but because they are lossless as far as I know, or lossless. Oh, you just got your Keychron. Okay, I need to check that out. Metal made me buy this keyboard, so if there's anything wrong with this, it's his fault. I'll send him the bill. Just kidding. Yeah, I actually, for my LCD XC 2021, I want to get the carbon fiber headband because it'll be just a little bit lighter, and that'll make a difference. But it's expensive. Their spicy take. Spotify's just fine. I know it is just fine. I do prefer Qobuz overall. Qobuz is like, if I could have the perfect streaming service, it would be Qobuz for sure. And I liked Rune as well. Rune is great because you have a built-in EQ function that's awesome, and it's easy to use. And also, what's awesome about Rune is you get a lot of you see exactly what you're streaming, like this as far as like the file format and all that stuff, which is great. But functionally, Spotify still has the best music discovery out of all of them. And there's people. There was something MKBHD said a long time ago, which was like, these Sony X. I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically along the lines of like, the Sony XM4 is fine. I don't need to get anything that actually sounds better because I'm only listening to Spotify. And I'm like, that's a garbage take right there. I mean, it's probably just because he's not educated on that topic. Like, but people who think that you're not actually gonna get a better experience with better headphones, better sounding headphones, better tuned headphones, because you're only listening to streamed music. That's nonsense. Vindaloo spicy. I love Indian food. It's one of my favorites. I want that now. Maybe tonight I'll have that. There's a fantastic Indian restaurant across the street from me. You guys are talking about the streaming services you use. You can use a VPN, get a Cobas account. I just am hesitant to do that because apparently you could get like lifetime banned if that was discovered or something along those lines. I don't know. I'd rather not. I'd rather just do it properly and officially. Maybe the next time I go to the States, I'll try and set up an account there or something along those lines. I don't know. See if I can figure that out. Super spicy. YouTube music is better than Spotify. Yeah, that is a spicy. I don't like that take at all. Spotify HD. Yeah. Nice spending hundreds, if not thousands, in audio gear and steal from artists. You should watch there's a video from Mike the Music Snob, who basically goes into great detail on angry detail on the differences between how artists are compensated from streaming services like Spotify. Spotify is the particular whipping boy at the moment for that. Compares that to the way that it worked for music sales in the past, like with CDs, and found that it's actually the same. So, like, proportionally the same. So, the narrative that Spotify is, ripping off artists and all this stuff is actually a lot. Well, it's just false, but it's also, that topic is a lot more nuanced than just what the assumptions people are making about it. And that that a lot of that has much more to do with the record labels than any of the streaming services or anything like that. But that video is worth a watch if you have the opinion that Spotify rips off people, is disproportionately ripping off artists and all that stuff. Watch that video because it's illuminating. With that said, I'm sure there are streaming platforms that are better, right, for artists, right, and it's obviously great if there are better ones, but to say it's meaningfully different from the CD industry, it's not. Arguably, smaller artists may have it better due to discoverability on streaming. Yeah, that there's probably an argument there. But even the establishments, I can't remember. I'm trying to think of what it's called, but it's from Mike the Music Snob on his YouTube channel. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Evil. And it does introduce a lot more people to your music. It's true. Yeah. All right, guys. We got another 20 minutes left, so let's do all spicy takes from here on out. Spicy questions. I want Thai chili spicy. All right. You can't have all the music ever made for so little money. It does not add up. Yeah. If I missed your question before, also feel free to ask it again because I just have to catch up, right? Ananda sounded awesome from as little as a OnePlus dongle I was using at CanJam. That was like a couple years ago, I imagine. Oh, here it is. Yeah, like Ananda and this thing would be, okay, I'm not gonna say endgame, but like all you need. um, Hi, Andrew. I wanted to ask a question about EQ. How does an EQ software communicate to a driver to change the frequency response? Not sure what you mean by that. Like drivers in like software driver, like audio drivers in your computer, or like you're talking about like a headphone driver? Because a EQ is a digital thing, right? So that's not it's a digital change. There are devices that you can get that do like analog change as well, which is pretty cool. Like I think that Sail amp had some of that, where you could add like an analog shelf filter and stuff like that. But it would be effectively like whatever adjustment you make would just be reflected like louder or quieter, right? In that particular region. Sundara would still be a bestseller if it was $600. Yeah, I think you're right. But they're very aggressive on their pricing. Like I was saying, like they're one of the few companies who are actually selling stuff for less right now, which is in a time when everybody else is increasing prices. It's kind of crazy. Are subjective reviews just as credible as measurement-based reviews? Okay, here's a spicy take. So think about how to phrase this. The biggest problem with subjective reviews from people who've purchased those headphones, so like people giving their impressions of things they own or that they have purchased, is that by and large, or the more common thing you're going to find is much more positive reviews and much more positive opinions because they own those products. And say nothing about like, experience with a wide variety of stuff or understanding where things sort of like should slot in as far as like how competitive it is. But that is probably the strongest motivator for saying positive things. It's you bought the thing, so you want to have you're basically expressing confidence in your purchase decision, and that has a really strong effect on how people view that stuff. I've been affected by that, right? Like, and in hindsight, you can sort of recognize it, right? But I think people are less likely to do that, and they get really attached to the things that they own, because they own them, without really putting the critical lens on it to say, okay, is this actually competitive? Is this actually, does this fit in the landscape where it's positioned? Not to say that things need to always be competitive for sound quality. Like my comments on the Meze stuff, for example, in the past, like the Empyrean and the Elite and stuff like that. It's like those are far and away better at many other things, but for sound quality alone, I didn't find them to be all that competitive at those prices. There are all kinds of folks who will have purchased those, and because they are at that price and they bought them, they have a ton of confidence. They want to have confidence in that, and so they're sort of expressing that when they're gushing about it, and that is very, very common. So to answer answer the comment there, which I'm trying to get back to and find again. Are subjective reviews just as credible? I think it depends on how they're done. I think they can be very credible, right? But I'd say by and large, no. I think, and this is, I think we're very quick to index as far as we can and as hard as we can to the extremes with things. So you have people like, the folks on ASR who are just totally, all of the confidence for them comes from the measurement, right? And then there are people who are on the other side who've actually, maybe in the best cases, they've actually heard more things. They, because they've heard more things and they've heard things that are like, that kind of contradict what some of the indexing for good that happens on some of those more objective based communities, what they're doing, they then reject all measurements and they just go all subjective. And I think the right answer is actually to use both. Like the best, and this is why I really respect what Crin does, right? The best evaluations, and what Android does, the best evaluations are the ones that include both objective stuff and subjective stuff. Because you include the objective stuff because you're doing what you can to sort of counteract or hedge against any biases that you might have, and also the fallibility of human perception. That's important. But then the other side of it is you're doing the subjective analysis and the subjective evaluation because you're also acknowledging that there's more to it than what we understand from the objective side of things. And that's why you need to have both. And I actually think that is not a spicy take. I think that is just the most reasonable take. But depending on, there's people who are in one camp or the other, and I worry about the industry as a whole and about the communities as a whole for this stuff, trending in these directions, right? Feeling siloed and getting sort of pushed one way or the other. And I really think that shouldn't be the case. I think we should be drawing very good the good things that are happening on ASR, because there are good things that are happening there, and we should be combining that with some of the good things that are happening on the more subjective based communities, and just saying, okay, well, let's figure out where some of these things come from and figure out how to predict them from the measurement side. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's sort of how I see it. And that's why, for me, when I look at, okay, who are the review, if I'm trying to find information about stuff, who do I trust? Well, it's the people who are doing both. That's why, I trust folks like Crin. That's why the reviewers on our team do both as well. Even folks like Brent Butterworth, right? I like his takes. Now I disagree with him on a number of them, like the ND Peacock, but we're also probably listening for different things. That was a good question, or a good topic. So I'm getting back. A spicy take: vinyl on 2-channel is better than headphones. Streaming on headphones is better than 2-channel. That is a spicy take, and I disagree. But I'm glad that you made it. I'm glad. I will celebrate the spice of your take. Are your Edition XS squeaky? I don't own an Edition XS. There was just a review unit. And it wasn't squeaky when I used it. Do you believe in the brown note? No. No. Another spicy take is that the Sandara scales like a MF. Absolutely floored by Sandara on the Ferrum Ore and Hypsos. Yeah, it does actually scale more than I realized. I was recently using it off of the Lilu. And Justin mentioned it to me. He's like, try the Sandara. And I was like, okay, sure. And yeah, it's a very different headphone off the Lilu. It just gets tons of low end, and it just gets, powerful. I mean, in a way though, like, you do lose a little bit of that sort of treble incisiveness that it has. But yeah, it does change. So yeah. Here's another spicy take from Brandon. Keebs is a rabbit hole people should just avoid. Yeah, lots of fun, but totally unnecessary. I do agree. I do agree, but it is fun. Yeah, that's a great way of framing it. Um, how do you protect your hearing loss from listening to music all day? Just don't listen loud, and don't listen all day. I wear headphones all day, but I'm not constantly listening to music. Um, EQ doesn't talk directly to the driver itself, I don't think. But it's certainly not digital. What, like talk to? That's a weird. I don't know if I understand the talk to drive. Like, it just tells the Windows audio stack itself to change the audio signal. Yeah. This headphone hobby changed my taste in music so much so that beloved music got ruined by bad mixing / mastering. Yeah. That is a thing. Yeah. So people get like super into, the Dolby Atmos stuff and the 3D spatial audio, and I'm just like, yeah, but like I like the Beatles. It's just doesn't quite work. um Meze Empyrean versus Hifiman Aria. I think the Aria is more technical. The Empyrean may have a more enjoyable tonality. It is a more chilled out listen. And yeah, it's way better built. Gil, yeah, I see your comment there about the Eternal, and you won't be giving a positive review. That's admirable, right? I think that's not the norm, though, right? I think for many people, they want to express their appreciation and passion for the thing that they bought, which is a form of confirmation bias. It's a form of circular logic. It's great. Why is it great? Because I bought it. Why did you buy it? Because I thought it was great. Right? It might actually be legitimately good, right? But I think more commonly people will do that sort of like feedback loop of confirmation bias with the things that they bought. And in a way, I kind of don't care. Like, I'm actually totally fine with that. It's just that I wouldn't really take it seriously as a, having done it myself, having known what kind of, like, how significant that influence can be. It's for the person, I would much rather look for the person who has zero interest in their own sort of the validation of their purchase, right? To get a sense of things. I see another super chat here. Raphael, thank you. Should I reduce preamp gain in my EQ software if I use inbuilt software like Xbase? What? Xbase is a analog function. And /best $500 IEM. For me, it's the SA6, but for other people who want a more correct tuning, I think the Moondrop variations. I would say between those two, $500. Yeah. Should I reduce the preamp gain in my EQ software? Oh, like in the if you do built-in. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, if you're using a function like Xbase, you don't need to reduce the preamp in your software because Xbase is analog, right? On the IFI devices, if that's what you're talking about. If you're sorry, it's electrical thing, right? It's not a digital. It's not a digital thing. If you're doing digital EQ with equalizer APO, that's when you reduce the pre-gain. If you're talking about physical preamp and reducing that, I don't think that matters that much. Another thing that is worth considering is that this gets into another topic. I probably don't know if I should get into that because it's very deep, but I recently learned that it's probably a good idea on some DACs to reduce your digital volume. It has to do with intersample overs. Golden probably knows about that. I don't want to get into that topic. But that was a thing I learned recently, thanks to Blaine. I need to have him on the live stream soon again. Let's see. When does metal do comeback on YouTube? Everyone's waiting on that. We should have another live stream, metal. We should, or maybe like the two of us with Blaine. We'll have the three of us. We should get Oratory on the live stream again. I think he's probably happy to not. I think Metal is probably happy to not have to deal with the unpleasantness of some of the unpleasantness that occurs. People come out and they'll like attack you randomly. Like, you should be going about your day, and then someone will message you like on Discord and be like, "Hey, you suck, hate you." Just at random, and it's just like that. Nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves the vitriol. It's just opinions, man. At the end of the day, it's just like your opinion, man. How many of these reviewers are presenting a skewed review because they don't listen to enough music genres? One guy I used to follow on YouTube only listened to rock, but he's confident in his takes. I think it can be influential, yeah, because if you're only listening to music that bottoms out at 100 hertz or 80 hertz, right, then your description or your understanding of whatever gear it is that you're listening to that music on is going to be affected by it. You're not going to have a complete understanding because you're not listening to anything that might fully token the frequency range down to the bottom, of human hearing. So yeah, I think you need to listen to a wide variety of stuff. I listen to electronic music when I'm doing evaluations because I know that there are a lot of people who are audiophiles who like electronic music, and it's important to have that represented as well, even though it's not my preferred genre to listen to. I listen to right now the Knight Rider playlist on Spotify, which it's great for. I think it's meant for like driving at night and staying awake, but it's got that kind of stuff that goes all the way down. I actually find that listening to acoustic jazz, where there's like upright double bass, that you can usually go pretty low. I'm trying to think what else, but then the point though is that those recordings are going to be very different from if someone's only listening to the Beatles, for example. Golden didn't like the slow abstract jazz. I loved it. I was like, yes, this is my jam. But no, you can't just listen to that stuff either, right? Like, you have to listen to a wide variety of stuff, or at least ideally. When you think we'll see a new audiophile over-ear headphone from Sennheiser, I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, I hope that with the acquisition, they start making some new over-ears. They've been doing a lot in the in-ear space recently, but I hope they do more over-ear stuff. They're one of my favorite companies, even though I've been critical of some of their stuff in the past or more recently. Sennheiser's what Sennheiser sort of stands for. That I love that style where it's like really good, simple, effective, smart, well done, good quality build, all that stuff. That I love that. Yeah, I want more. People don't truly A/B test gear or blind test. That's the biggest problem with a lot of reviewers. Okay, so I have a spicy take on that. I do have and will be doing A/B test stuff, as I've mentioned, and I do think it's important to level match when you're doing comparisons. But a level match with pink noise, stuff like that. But I don't think that an A/B test is sufficient for doing a review. This was my take a long time ago, and it relates to actually something that I worked on for my not for my master's thesis, but in grad school, which was basically to point out that differential knowledge is not actually sufficient to count as comprehensive knowledge. But what does that mean in this case, right? It's like you can't. So just because you can tell a difference doesn't mean that you're fully explaining how a thing sounds. Right? Maybe if somebody's doing like an A/B test or something like that, right? And they're only listening to the bass, and they go, "Oh yeah, this is different in the bass," right? There could be all kinds of other stuff going on. Like one could be like, super weird or wonky in the treble, right? But that person wasn't listening to that particular part. They weren't listening specifically for that. So as much as I think we should be doing A/B testing, right? I think I don't think that should be. People shouldn't be necessarily only doing that, if that makes sense, right? I don't think it's a particularly good review if all there is an A/B. So like, or another way of putting that would be like, it's fine to do A/B. It's just like we need to not overinflate that as a part of the review, because it's especially when you're dealing with stuff like amps and DACs and being able to have just like a button where it just like switches over. That is crucially important. Because people are talking about like the crazy differences in sources, and it's like maybe, just maybe, some of that could be accounted for by a slight difference in volume. If anything, the weak point of your reviews is that you use very low quality amps and DACs. Actually, right now I use I would say I don't use low quality amps and DACs. I use the Matrix X Saber Pro for the DAC, which is around $2,000, I think. And then for the amp, I currently use the Vioelectric HPA V550, but that's only because it's very versatile for like some of the stuff that I can run like anything off of it, right? But I can also run speakers off of it as well. So yeah, it's a versatile unit. I also use the Hifiman EF1000 depending on what it is that I'm evaluating, which is like 15 grand. I've evaluated off of the Bakun. So just because I recommend people spend more money on headphones and get the good enough sources, for solid state gear, that's far less expensive, doesn't mean that I uniquely use that. I don't use a shit Magni 3 Heresy, for example. So even though like my personal equipment is not particularly expensive, that's only because I'm poor and can't afford nice things. But in the studio, where I have access to a lot of this equipment to evaluate stuff on, I'm evaluating on stuff that I would never be able to afford. I'm actually really curious to try some of the DCS stuff. I heard that at Munich High End as well, which was like crazy. Those things are enormous. But they recently came up with a new called the Lena, I think, which I'm excited to hear at some point. And I'll also be trying the Ferrum stuff as well. I'm reading Jack's spicy take here on the ZMF difference of perspective, I'm going to call it. That all of that is just unfortunate and sad. And I honestly couldn't tell you what it was. I know why. It didn't work out, professionally with us. But that I was not part of that, right? So I think I just got caught in the crossfire, which sucks, because I think back to like fairly recently where we were just having beers together, hanging out, and it's like, this is not a good feeling, right? It's unpleasant feeling, like kind of in the pit of your chest when you come across that, and things change like that on you. And I hope that you know, one day, you know, that friendship can exist again. It's like, I truly hope that is possible. So I'm very happy to, you know, as much as I definitely wouldn't work with him again. I'm very happy to, you know, put many things under the bridge, you know, or water under the bridge, and just move on. So, because I don't want any more, you know, I don't want that feeling anymore. Last Rhino, sorry, I missed this. This seems interesting. Saying never is not really allowing for learning experience or evolving. I respect your view, but I have ears and I have heard the difference. Oh, the difference between what? Between sources? I think there are differences for sure. Actually, I think the differences are also probably measurable in some way. It's the problem though is that if we look at like how, or okay, let me clarify that. So please don't misunderstand me when I say that the differences are probably measurable. I'm not suggesting that, you know, this has anything to do with SynEd. I'm just saying there's probably some way of identifying or predicting what that difference might be. It's just that we don't understand it well enough. Right? If it can be heard, it can be measured. That's all I'm saying with that. But the other thing that we need to consider is that we don't have an index for good. There could be all kinds of relationships with different harmonics, for example, that might end up being very pleasant to listen to, but we don't think of in that way because everybody seems to be chasing, you know, a very crude or basic kind of axiom for that, which is to say, you know, something along the lines of less is always better. And, you know, to that I say, okay, maybe, right? Probably. But we need to also explore if maybe there's certain relationships that are, you know, that would be subjectively preferred by people. And it's hard to know because I don't think those studies, I mean, there is an interesting study on distortion that I think is worth checking out, that does have some sort of preference correlation there. That is, yeah, I think more research needs to be done on that stuff. But for the same reason, like there are people who prefer listening to tube amplifiers, right? There's something enjoyable about that. You know, it's difficult to come up with a singular kind of, you know, thing to look for in measurements when we don't really have it all. That's sort of how I see that. We don't really have it all in the analysis, I should say. Wow, there's a lot going on here. Oh, wow, okay. Removing that. That's the first time I've had that kind of stuff. Sorry, I need to moderate some of this. That's the downside with with the stream delay, so you don't see that right away. Sorry, Sheep Dude just replying to you here. This coming from Apple Music Fund. Oh, from your Apple Music Fund. Okay. I just wanted to show support for the channel. What's your favorite headphone currently? Thank you for the support. Favorite headphone currently? The Hifiman HE6. No, just kidding. Favorite headphone. Favorite. Like if I could have any headphone on the planet. I mean, I haven't tried those. Like I've tried the Shangri-La Senior, but I haven't tried the Sennheiser HE1. So it's hard for me to answer that. But I still think this Vara is at the top of my list for, like, you know, overall the most enjoyable sound. for me, for what I look for. But also near the top of that list is the Focal Utopia for different reasons, because it is a slightly different kind of sound. Also, an EQ'd LCD5 is up there. HE6 is also very enjoyable, even though you can't buy it anymore. The old original. Yeah, that's. Man, I know they're expensive up there, but yeah. Hope that answers the question. There is a ranking list in the description if you're curious to see more about that list, because there's like the EQ list, and then there's the no EQ list and all that stuff. Like, as I was saying before, guilty pleasure these days is like an Alere with Utopia pads off the Kenzie, 32 ohm out, right? Like that's like a flavor that I really enjoy. It's kind of a downward tilted thing with a little bit of coloration. I quite like that. Your opinion of shit has gone downhill, seeing how many of the cheaper ones just blow up. Our Magni 3 Heresy blew up. So to be clear, I really like shit, and I recommend their stuff all the time. I've owned many shit products, but our Heresy blew up. This is the first time that I've had an amplifier. No, I shouldn't say that. That's the first time I've had a shit amp blow up on me. There was one other that did blow up on me, which was the Drop CTH, the Cavalli tube hybrid. That one blew up on me within 10 minutes of using it. But the shit one worked fine. And it was just at one point it just decided it had had enough. Someone was saying something about JDS Labs, and I missed it. Sorry about that. I think you're the only reviewer I know where I constantly see you saying, I learned this recently. Yeah, but that's because there's so much that we don't know. The more you learn, the more you don't know. That's also, it helps that I talk to people, like Blaine, who know far more than I do, or like Oratory. You get a lot of information from people in various different communities, like audio science discords and audio science server, not audio science review. But there's good stuff there too, right? There's stuff to learn there as well. You just have to be selective, I guess. But yeah, just making sure that you don't fall too hard into the dogma, because there's a lot of that out there too. That's why it's good to approach stuff from it's just me, I don't know. I'd rather approach stuff from a let's find out perspective, rather than a it is this way perspective. You heard Andrew likes philosophy. Yes. 90% or more of the audience there doesn't care about such detailed audio science topics, unfortunately. Yeah. I think actually this is something that's interesting, because I would bet, like, we get entrenched in all kinds of different, we get overwhelmed with different discussions about these particular topics. But I bet that the majority of people out there do not care. They just want to know if something makes sense for them. So sometimes I wonder how, like, is it worth it, to get into these squabbles about, the science of stuff? I mean, I think it is, to be clear, but, for the average person out there, they don't care. Sad internet number affects decision. Yeah, man, I was reading some of the threads on there recently, because again, there is good stuff on there sometimes, but some of the takes from the members there are just awful. Like, some of the takes are just truly horrific, and then they're reinforced, and I'm just like, wow, that's nothing to do with like subjective, just like the thing, like they clearly haven't read the research, right? And so the things that they're indexing for are just the most blunt instrument kind of, approaches to this kind of stuff. It's just mind blowing. Oh, what's up? DMS is here. Awesome. Yeah, we'll go for just a little bit more. We've been going for 2 hours now, over 2 hours. So, you recall I love the Warwick from high end. Yes, the Aperio was crazy detailed. I like the Bravura as well. The Bravura is the one that I think realistically I'll be able to get in and actually do a review of. Even though my heart wants to try that Aperio. But yeah, they were both good. But yeah, I really like the Aperio. Let's see. DMS is here, so that means the stream must continue, right? Exactly. All right, let's continue. What happened to the amp reviewer we had? Yeah. It just didn't work out. I think he was actually, I really like the guy. He's a super nice guy, super fun to work with. When we went to CanJam SoCal together, he and I were doing interviews together with people, and it was just like great. But I think for whatever reason, it just wasn't working out with sort of the. I think more to do with the approach and what his interests were. I think we probably should have had him more as maybe a headphone reviewer, and we were trying to find like a amplifier reviewer at the time, and it just didn't work out. So nothing against the guy. The guy was awesome, and I think he's still in the industry somewhere. I'm not sure where he's working now, but yeah, great guy. Let's see. Oh, JD. Okay, so yeah, JDS Labs said they're no longer focusing on measurements, but instead will work on improving designs. Are we the limits of what's audible? I saw that. So I don't think it's that they're not focusing on measurements or just ignoring them or anything like that. I think it's more that they also recognize that SYNAD is not really that important. It's not a thing to hang your hat on, right? Even though it is also good to have low noise and good to have low distortion, but those other individual metrics, once they're past the point of the audible threshold, no longer matter, right? If you're looking at if you're looking at distortion, don't look at SYNAD to get a sense of how bad potentially audible distortion would be. Look at the distortion, and just understand things about distortion, not that it's actually important information or interesting information, right? That stuff still matters. Because the pointlessness of SYNAD has more to do with the fact that it's a number that tells us nothing. And yeah, I'd say for more info on that, watch the video. But we did the article as well. But it doesn't mean that it's pointless to look at the distortion measurements. I recommend looking at Golden Sound's website. And read the measurements there. What I loved was I'm not sure if it was you who measured the Rebel amp, but somebody measured the Rebel amp. Maybe it was you, because everybody kept saying to me like, "Oh, you only like the Rebel amp over the A90 because the Rebel amp has some sort of distortion." And it turns out it also measures well. I love that. But yeah, the other thing too is that with the JDS Labs thing is that they probably recognize that we're at a point where this stuff doesn't matter, and we can focus our efforts more on things that do, which was good to see. The other thing that was interesting was at Munich High End we talked to I spoke with an engineer, an amp designer, who was telling me that he thinks maybe there is something that we're not actually measuring, because when you A/B to a wire, the measured distortion was not an indicator of it being closer to the wire. Which I thought that was interesting. So these answers are not fully figured out yet. As much as things like to represent them as. That was you. Okay, same synod as the THX 789. Yeah. Bet they sound different. So no, Golden. What do you think? Do you think that we're not measuring something when it comes to, or is it that we're not analyzing measurements sufficiently, like to the in the right way? I would watch a stream of Resolve listening to Burzum off of a DT 1990 and a topping A90. Yes. All right, we'll do that. I'll pass that message along to Taryn, and we'll set that up. What's your opinion on SBAF? Read a few weird reviews there. I used to be an SBAFer. That's where I came from. I was in Headphi because Headphi was like, and it still is in many ways, the place, the place, right? And then I found myself getting into some of the discussions on SBAF, and I found myself sort of being part of that community. And then there's nothing really bad. They're a little bit like a little bit exclusive there. And then I was also still commenting on Headphi threads and involved there in their discussions. And then I was randomly introduced to the Headphone forum, the Headphone community forum by Android, because I was trying to explain I found a particular IEM to be really aggressively tuned between 3 and 5K, and there was a guy who just couldn't handle that. He was just he was just so how could you say that? You switch to this cable and it's going to sound you're gonna love it. It's going to sound way better, and your assessment is wrong and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, I can't deal with this thread anymore. And so I just Anthony introduced me to our forum, and ever since this is now what I do. So you can blame Android for if you don't like my opinions on stuff, blame Android. No, I'm just kidding. He's one of my favorite people in the industry. Your guys' opinion on Grado seems very polarizing. So my personal opinion on Grado is that no. But there are lots of people who like them, right? I think that I think it's crazy that the pads that they use, the material, they're so uncomfortable. For me, I don't know how people are okay with that. They're a lot better with those Geekria pads, which I think is the best name for any product ever of all time, is to call something Geekria. Geekria is what I have during these live streams. Just a bout of Geekria. I think it's more a case of us not knowing how all the various metrics come together to form a complete picture. Yes, exactly that. Well said. That's my take as well. I'm glad you said that. Especially when they're not fixed versus output level or other condition. A lot of companies have already looked at this stuff. For example, Chord working hard to eliminate noise floor modulation, or ESS working hard to ensure distortion versus DC offset is stable as can be. Yeah. Yeah, so to get also to that point, some people say oh, this amp is warmer, this amp is brighter. When you look at the frequency response, it's perfectly linear, and you go, well, that's obviously nonsense. I don't actually think it's nonsense. I think that there's a potential that conservation of certain harmonics can lead to psychoacoustic effects that can make something sound tonally slightly different. We did that video on Synad, included this in there, where we increased the third harmonic distortion of a 300 or 315 hertz tone, and at different, it was to show something else entirely. It was to show that at different volumes you would actually notice it more right? That at the higher volume, it was actually harder to hear, the elevated third harmonic distortion. It was significantly elevated. And when it was lower, it actually sounded like the tone was different. But I think that also indicates that when you have certain harmonics or some sort of relationship going on with certain harmonics, there's a potential for those psychoacoustic effects to take hold. And I don't mean like that's just like placebo. I mean like, actual perceptions of tonal differences due to certain harmonic relationships, in the harmonic distortion. I think there's totally potential for that. So, but that on its own doesn't, I mean, that's also a very, like, that's looking at a very narrow or limited scope of what could potentially be other influencing factors on why people have the perceptions that they do. But one other thing that might be influential, right? What is ours take? Why is it in audio science that if something that is observed can't be measured, the conclusion is that it doesn't exist? In real science, usually that means you need better measurement tools. Was that the take that you guys are disagreeing with? Oh, you're okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think probably because people are fallible. I think that's like you're hedging against the fallibility of human beings. You're taking yourself out of it as much as you can. But I also think that because this is something where we should probably be like confirming things somehow. We need something to confirm it to, and at some level that requires actually listening to things. I think you need to include both. The subjective BA timbre thing, yeah. Another interesting example. Oh, yeah, I see. Okay, another interesting example is why a BA driver sounds different to a dynamic driver. Dynamic drivers have their harmonics rise and fall almost exactly like sound pressure, like linked to sound pressure level. But in a BA, the harmonic can remain somewhat fixed, which means that lower. The other interesting thing is apparently those are not strictly minimum phase either. Which means at lower levels you have relatively higher distortion. Potentially explaining the subjective BA timbre thing. Could be, yeah. I just thought it was potentially related to like elevated third and elevated fifth that tends to show up in BAs, but it could also be volume related as a result of that. Distortion is related to level, but it's not related to level necessarily in the same way across the board. Which is interesting, yeah. This is all getting an interesting discussion. Unfortunately, we've been going for 2.5 hours. More of this next time. Burzum is high quality. Emperor is the quality one should go for on the A90. No. But okay, yeah, we're gonna end the stream now. But thanks to everybody for your awesome questions and discussion topics. Love this stream today, so big thanks to all of you guys. Shout out to Golden Metal, Chef Steve for your spicy takes, Ace of Spades, all you guys who participated. Last Rhino, great to have you guys here. DMS, of course. And Brandon, you're always here. Just saying, all the people who are here, all the folks who donated, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys in the next live stream. As usual, if you guys want more of the written content, that's up on headphones.com. That's where the reviews are. The measurements linked in the description. That's up on the forum. And big shout out to Defineers for doing that, putting that together, and then also the ranking list there as well. So I will see you guys in the next live stream, maybe next week, but also there will be videos out on the channel before then. So bye for now. Have a good weekend, guys.